Jean Laurent d'Alembert. Jean Laurent d'Alembert. Jean-Baptiste Laurent d'Alembert, his last name is also written as d'Alembert in English, was a French mathematician, mechanician, physicist, philosopher, and music theorist. Until 1759 he was, together with Denis Diderot, a co-editor of the Encyclopédie. D'Alembert's formula for obtaining solutions to the wave equation is named after him. The wave equation is sometimes referred to as D'Alembert's equation, and the fundamental theorem of algebra is named after D'Alembert in French. Early years. Born in Paris, d'Alembert was the natural son of the writer Claudine Guérin de Tencin and the Chevalier Louis Camus de Stotches, an artillery officer. De Stotches was abroad at the time of d'Alembert's birth. Days after birth his mother left him on the steps of the church. According to custom, he was named after the patron saint of the church. D'Alembert was placed in an orphanage for foundling children, but his father found him and placed him with the wife of a glazier, Madame Rassot, with whom he lived for nearly 50 years. She gave him little encouragement. When he told her of some discovery he had made or something he had written, she generally replied. De Stotches secretly paid for the education of Jean Laurent, but did not want his paternity officially recognized. Studies and adult life. D'Alembert first attended a private school. The Chevalier de Stotches left D'Alembert an annuity of 1,200 livres on his death in 1726. Under the influence of the de Stotches family, at the age of 12 D'Alembert entered the Jansenist College des Squatternations. Here he studied philosophy, law, and the arts, graduating his baccalaureate in arts in 1735. In his later life, D'Alembert scorned the Cartesian principles he had been taught by the Jansenists, physical promotion, innate ideas, and the vortices. The Jansenists steered D'Alembert toward an ecclesiastical career, attempting to deter him from pursuits such as poetry and mathematics. Theology was, however, rather unsubstantial fodder for D'Alembert. He entered law school for 2 years and was nominated avocat in 1738. He was also interested in medicine and mathematics. Jean enrolled first as Jean-Baptiste d'Amberg and subsequently changed his name, perhaps for reasons of euphony, to D'Alembert. Later, in recognition of D'Alembert's achievements, Frederick the Great of Prussia proposed the name D'Alembert for a suspected moon of Venus, however D'Alembert refused the honor. Lay Woolley, 1952. Article Moon of Venus in Galaxy Science Fiction, July 1952. NDP Publishing Galaxy Science Fiction Digital Series, 2016. Retrieved from Google Books. Career. In July 1739 he made his first contribution to the field of mathematics, pointing out the errors he had detected in Analyse des Montres, a communication addressed to the Académie des Sciences. At the time, Analyse des Montres was a standard work which D'Alembert himself had used to study the foundations of mathematics. D'Alembert was also a Latin scholar of some note and worked in the latter part of his life on a translation of Testis, for which he received wide praise including that of Denis Diderot. In 1740 he submitted his second scientific work from the field of fluid mechanics, Mémoire sur la réfraction des corps solides, which was recognized by Clairaut. In this work D'Alembert theoretically explained refraction. In 1741, after several failed attempts, D'Alembert was elected into the Académie des Sciences. He was later elected to the Berlin Academy in 1746, and a Fellow of the Royal Society in 1748. In 1743, he published his most famous work, Traité de Dynamique, in which he developed his own laws of motion. When the Encyclopédie was organized in the late 1740s, D'Alembert was engaged as co-editor with Diderot, and served until a series of crises temporarily interrupted the publication in 1757. He authored over 1,000 articles for it, including the famous Preliminary Discourse. D'Alembert abandoned the foundation of materialism. Friedrich Albert Lange, History of Materialism and Critique of its Present Importance, Kant and Materialism, when he doubted whether there exists outside us anything corresponding to what we suppose we see in this way. D'Alembert agreed with the idealist Berkeley and anticipated the transcendental idealism of Kant. In 1752, he wrote about what is now called D'Alembert's paradox, that the drag on a body immersed in an inviscid, incompressible fluid is zero. In 1754, D'Alembert was elected a member of the Académie des Sciences, of which he became permanent secretary on 9 April 1772. Jean Laurent d'Alembert, secrétaire perpétuel www. Académie Française, FR/Immortals. In 1757, an article by D'Alembert in the 7th volume of the encyclopedia suggested that the Geneva clergymen had moved from Calvinism to pure Socinianism, basing this on information provided by Voltaire. The pastors of Geneva were indignant and appointed a committee to answer these charges. Under pressure from Jacob Vernes, Jean-Jacques Rousseau and others, D'Alembert eventually made the excuse that he considered anyone who did not accept the Church of Rome to be a Socinianist, and that was all he meant, and he abstained from further work on the encyclopedia following his response to the critique. He was elected a foreign honorary member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 1781. Music theories. D'Alembert's first exposure to music theory was in 1749 when he was called upon to review a memo submitted to the Académie by Jean-Philippe Reymar. This article, written in conjunction with Diderot, would later form the basis of Reymar's 1750 treatise Demonstration du Principe de l'harmonie. D'Alembert wrote a glowing review praising the author's deductive character as an ideal scientific model. He saw in Reymar's music theory's support for his own scientific ideas, a fully systematic method with a strongly deductive synthetic structure. 2 years later, in 1752, D'Alembert attempted a fully comprehensive survey of Reymar's works in his Elements de musique. Théorique et pratique suivant les principes de M. Reymar, emphasizing Reymar's main claim that music was a mathematical science that had a single principle from which could be deduced all the elements and rules of musical practice, as well as the explicit Cartesian methodology implied. D'Alembert helped to popularize the work of the composer and advertise his own theories. He claims to have clarified, developed, and simplified the principles of Reymar, arguing that the single idea of there was not sufficient to derive the entirety of music. D'Alembert instead claimed that 3 principles would be necessary to generate the major musical mode, the minor mode, and the identity of octaves. Because he was not a musician, however, D'Alembert misconstrued the finer points of Reymar's thinking, changing and removing concepts that would not fit neatly into his understanding of music. Although initially grateful, Reymar eventually turned on D'Alembert while voicing his increasing dissatisfaction with J. Rousseau's encyclopedia articles on music. The New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians, seconded S. V. D'Alembert. A long preliminary discourse D'Alembert wrote for the 1762 edition of his Elements attempted to summarize the dispute and act as a final rebuttal. D'Alembert also discussed various aspects of the state of music in his celebrated Discours Préliminaire of Diderot's Encyclopédie. D'Alembert claims that, compared to the other arts, music, which speaks simultaneously to the imagination and the senses, has not been able to represent or imitate as much of reality because of the lack of sufficient inventiveness and resourcefulness of those who cultivate it. He wanted musical expression to deal with all physical sensations rather than merely the passions alone. D'Alembert believed that modern music had only achieved perfection in his age, as there existed no classical Greek models to study and imitate. He claimed that time destroyed all models which the ancients may have left us in this genre. He praises Reymar as that manly, courageous, and fruitful genius who picked up the slack left by Jean-Baptiste Lully in the French musical arts. Personal life. D'Alembert was a participant in several Parisian salons, particularly those of Marie Thérèse Rodet-Geoffrin, of the Marquise du Deffand, and of Julie de Lespinasse. D'Alembert became infatuated with Julie de Lespinasse and eventually took up residence with her. He suffered bad health for many years, and his death was as the result of a urinary bladder illness. As a known unbeliever, D'Alembert, though privately an atheist and materialist, presented the respectable public face of la philosophy in the French capital while remaining henceforth uninterruptedly aligned with Voltaire, like the French and English deists, and unlike the scientific atheists such as Diderot, D'Alembert, and D'Holbach. Such English scientists as David Hartley and Joseph Priestley presented their scientific theories as evidence for their scriptural views. In positive theory, there is a wide divergence between Voltaire's panpsychic deism and Diderot's physiological materialism, or D'Alembert's agnostic positivism, and Helvetius' sociological materialism. D'Alembert was buried in a common unmarked grave. Legacy. In France, the fundamental theorem of algebra is known as the D'Alembert/Gauss theorem, as an error in D'Alembert's proof was caught by Gauss. He also created his ratio test, a test to determine if a series converges. The D'Alembert operator, which first arose in D'Alembert's analysis of vibrating strings, plays an important role in modern theoretical physics. While he made great strides in mathematics and physics, D'Alembert is also famously known for incorrectly arguing in quadrupole that the probability of a coin landing has increased for every time that it came up tails. In gambling, the strategy of decreasing one's bet the more one wins, and increasing one's bet the more one loses, is therefore called the D'Alembert system, a type of martingale. In South Australia, a small inshore island in southwestern Spencer Gulf was named Isle de Lambert by the French explorer Nicolas Baudin during his expedition to New Holland. The island is better known by the alternative English name of Lepson Island. The island is a conservation park and seabird rookery. Fictional portrayal. Diderot portrayed de Lambert in Le Rêve de Lambert, written after the two men had become estranged. It depicts de Lambert ill in bed, conducting a debate on materialist philosophy in his sleep. De Lambert's Principle, a 1996 novel by Andrew Crimi, takes its title from de Lambert's Principle in Physics. Its first part describes de Lambert's life and his infatuation with Julie de Lespinasse,